Welcome to the first of three workshops in this web coding series we're going to do. My name is Sean. I run the Digital Lounge, and I'll be your instructor for the next three workshops. We're going to go through HTML today. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that is in a minute if you don't know. Next week, we'll go through CSS, which I'll also explain more next week, but it is the language that you use to style a website. You'll notice that the site that we create with HTML today is going to look really boring and basic, but CSS is what you're going to use to make it pretty and make it actually look decent. And that's something that people would want to visit. And then the third workshop, we're going to go through some more intermediate CSS concepts. There's more to CSS than there is to HTML, so we can devote some more time to it. And then also talk about one of the various methods that you can publish your code to the web so that people can actually go and visit your live site. So HTML, what is it? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext just means that you can link from HTML to HTML. Just that's how the internet's built, on links to other sites. Markup is just marking up with little tags to tell the browser how to interpret your content and display it properly to how you want it. And then language is just the thing that you're writing it with. As a standard language for creating web pages, I would probably guess that every web page out there has HTML as its base, and it describes the structure of a web page. This is where we're adding our text, our images, where we're kind of making them into a hierarchy, putting them in order that we want. And then it's typically paired with CSS to style it, and then JavaScript to add some more interactivity, some more kind of cool things to it. We're not going to go through JavaScript in this series because it is a programming language, which is a level up from HTML and CSS, which is just some basic coding. And it would take a lot longer than 2 hours to go through enough that it would make sense. So before we jump into actually learning some of the code, I want to explain what an HTML element is. It's a building block of HTML in the sense that everything you write in HTML is going to be following the syntax, where the entire element is this whole piece of content in this white. So let's break it down a little bit to understand it some more. Elements require a starting tag. So that's this caret. In this case, it's a P for paragraph, and then this closing caret. There's some attributes and values, which we'll go through in a little bit. But a starting tag is just the caret, that indicator of what type of tag it is, if you want to include attributes and values, and then that closing one. Most HTML elements need a closing tag, which is pretty much the same exact thing. You just got to add this / before that tag indicator. And that basically just tells your browser, hey, we started our paragraph, we're ending it here. It just lets everyone know that in there is going to be your text. Now, there are some elements that don't require that end tag, and you'll be able to see some of that if you're going to use Visual Studio Code as your text editor. So did everyone download Visual Studio Code specifically, or are you using something else?
Yeah.
VS Code? Awesome. Yeah, so that's just the one that I'll be using. It's the one that I've found to be the most friendly. It does some really nice things, which I'll point out. But back to this element, in between our starting and our ending tag, we'll see any piece of content that we're actually adding. So in this case, we are defining a paragraph element, which is just body text. Like if you were to open up a Word doc and start typing normally, that's kind of the text you'll see. And DL, which I put here, will actually be the content that's displayed on the web page because it's in between those tags. And then attributes and their associated values allow you to configure some of the functionality of your elements a little bit more. And this one's actually one of the very last attributes we'll go through today, but you can do some nice things with this, and you'll learn more about those in a minute. So we'll do some in-system coding now. So let me navigate to VS Code if Acrobat will let me leave. There we go. Cool. So I have blown up my view in VS Code so that you can see it better on the screen. So it might look slightly different to how you're seeing it when you open it up. Let's go through VS Code a little bit because both of you said that you're going to use it. And are you in the back using VS Code too? Yes. Awesome. Cool. So we're all on the same page. We're all using the same thing. That's perfect. So this is VS Code, stands for Visual Studio Code. It is, I believe, developed by Microsoft and published for free. And then let's just go through a little bit of what you can do. Now, you might notice, first of all, that my colors look different than yours. And that is because VS Code allows you to change your color theme. If you click on code, or if you're using a Windows, it might be under file. And then under settings, where is it? And then theme and color theme, you'll be given all of these options for what you want to change your theme to. It just basically changes the color of the UI. I like this one because it's kind of more dark theme. I prefer most of my technology that I use to be in dark theme, but you can choose whatever you would like. The specific one I'm using is Material Theme High Contrast, which I do think I downloaded from the web somewhere. Also, under that settings, if you go to the general settings, there's all of these different settings that you can play around with. I haven't changed anything so that we should all have the same kind of settings besides the color. And you can play around with that later. We have these 3 buttons right here that'll open up different panels. The left one will be your Explorer panel that shows you your file stuff. I have a folder open, which we'll do in a second. There's this bottom panel, which has a couple things that you can do in it. There's the terminal, which is going to be a little bit more of an intermediate concept that we won't cover, and a debug console if you wanted to start testing your code and making sure that there's no errors in it. And then there's this right one that drag a view here to display, but I've actually never played around with that. So we got some more buttons over here. This one also opens that Explorer menu. You can also search. So as we're going through some actual code, let's say you made a mistake and you were writing a whole write-up about some person and you realize that you spelled their name wrong. You can actually do the find and replace and just find that mistake and replace it with the correct one. A lot easier than having to go through every line of code and trying to find it. Source control, Git is a source control system, probably the most popular out there. More useful when you're going to use multiple developers on a project, when you want to track changes and what people are doing. You can use this on your personal projects if you like, but we won't go through that in this series. There's also that run and debug console over here on the left. And then extensions. So like most pieces of software, the thing that you get shipped when you download is kind of the bare bones of that piece of software. And then you can add extensions or other things to make it your own, add additional functionality. So you can go through these and have fun. Yeah.
Does it, mine looks pretty different probably because I am on.
Maybe.
So I don't see like the side.
Yeah, if you click on this, is there this button? And you don't have these buttons over here? Okay, let me take a look real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So with extensions, you can search for ones that you want to add, and I'm going to have you add one that we'll use later. If you search live server, it's this one. It's like a purple, kind of almost Wi-Fi symbol icon by Ritwick Day. And you can just click install. We'll use that probably at the end of this workshop, but helpful to have it installed right away. Cool. Now, one last thing I want to do to prep us for being able to use this later is you have to have it with a folder opened. So under Explorer, if you open a folder, you can go quickly to your desktop and create a folder if you want to use that, or if you already have one that you want to use, you can do that. I have one made that has some audio and images that I'll play around with, but if you don't have those already, that's fine. So if you just click open, you should be able to find a folder, and with it highlighted, you can just click open and it'll open the folder of your choice. And we'll be adding our code file to this folder. All right, I'll give you a minute to do that. No, just create one right now. Yeah. So you should be able to go to your Finder, or I don't remember what it's called on Windows, but you can just go File, New Folder. You should open it under the start menu or under that Explorer one where we had before where I said open folder. Yeah. No, you're good. Cool. We all have a folder open. Awesome. So now with VS Code, we want to create our actual HTML file. So you can go to File, New Text File, and that'll open up our kind of boring text file for now. We're going to start adding stuff to it. I'm going to close this side panel so I have some more screen real estate. I did that by clicking on this toggle left panel. Cool. So VS Code does this really nice thing where you can code in so many different coding and programming languages. The easiest way to make sure that we are all coding in the same thing is clicking this select language and finding HTML. It should have these carets that we saw when I showed that graphic of the HTML elements. We'll just change your little tab icon to that and nothing else. Cool. We all good there? Yeah, so when you start a new file or file new text file, there's select a language, and then there should be HTML in this list. So now I'm just going to do best practice whenever you're working with technology. I'm going to save it immediately just so I have that file created. File save, and then I'm going to navigate to that folder that we created and then just save it in there. Now, we need to name it something specific. And this is just a little quirk of coding. So when you upload your code files to a repository, a server, and you're directing browsers to go to your website, they need to read through your code to decide what to display and how it's displayed. Now, the only way that we can do to like make sure that they are going to this as the home page of your site is by naming this index.html. So index.html. And this basically makes sure that no matter what browser a visitor to your website is using, that it's going to display this as your home page. And then they can click all of the links that we can create to other pages. We'll just click save, and then we can see that in our name here, and it adds it right here as well. Cool. So now let's start coding. The first thing we do with an HTML document is we do this thing called a doc type declaration. And this basically lets all of the browsers know that this is an HTML document and you should read it as HTML code. So how we do that is we enter this left caret, and then VS Code does this really nice thing where it auto-populates what it thinks you want to add. And that first one that they show is doc type. So you can click that if you want. I'm going to type it out just so we can all see that, which is an exclamation point, and then in all caps, doc type. And this is where using an editor like VS Code really helps, is because it'll do syntax highlighting. It'll highlight your code of like a similar function. So like elements, attributes, content in the same color so you can more easily scan your code. But back to the declaration, we have left caret, exclamation point, doc type in all caps. We'll add a space, and then in all lowercase, we'll do HTML, and then our closing caret. So doing this makes sure that every browser knows that this document is an HTML document, read it as such. We make sure that our website is displayed how we coded it to be. Cool. So we can enter to go to line 2, and then we're going to then add another setup tag, which is the basic HTML tag. So left caret, and again, in all lowercase HTML. Now, VS Code is pretty cool because when I press the closing caret, it automatically ended my tag with the one that's the end tag with the /. So now everything that I write in between the starting and the closing tag is HTML code, right? We got to contain it all within there. So I'll press enter. Cool. And now you notice VS Code automatically indents your next line of code. And in HTML, we use indentation to nest code. So now this is saying we have our HTML code. Within that, we're going to be writing a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to create more sections and stuff like that so that we can apply certain styling, makes it easier to read, all of that stuff. Following along so far? Cool. Is this everyone's first time with HTML? Or have some people used it before? Yeah, cool. All right. So now we need two sections within here, and then we have our document set up. The first section is the head section. So we'll do opening caret, we'll type head and close it. VS Code automatically ends that or adds that end tag, and we can enter to have some space in between it. I'm going to go to the end of that end tag, enter it again to start a new one. We're going to do the same thing, but with body instead of head. So what's the difference between these sections? So the head section is basically your metadata section. This is stuff that you can add that'll set up your website for success, but it won't be displayed to a viewer to your website with two asterisks. We're going to go through two different things that you put in here that does show up, but in a slightly different location. Then the body section is where we're going to write all of our code that we want to display on the main part of our website. Pretty easy to understand. You know, metadata in the head, kind of think like that. Everything else in the body. Cool. So let's go through this metadata section. We'll click back up to line 4. And if you press tab, VS Code automatically guesses that you want to go in and nest it. So we'll just make sure that we are indented into this head section. Indentation in HTML is 2 spaces, but if you press tab in VS Code, it automatically does that for you. Cool. So let's start off with the first thing that'll actually show up, and that is the title. So if we do opening caret, type title, closing caret, it automatically adds that end one again. The words that we write in between these two will show up as the text in our browser tab. So when you open, I'll open Google real quick, where it says new tab here, this is where we're configuring what it says right there. So you can put whatever you want here. I'm going to put web coding series. And again, you can put whatever you want. Cool. Now, the other thing that you can configure in here that shows is this icon right here. So we're going to do that. If you don't have a image that you want to use as an icon, that's fine. You can just watch along and add later. We use that with the link element. So opening caret, link. Now you'll notice when I closed it, VS Code didn't add that end tag. And that's because link is actually a self-closing tag where you don't need that end one. So it's time to learn about our first attribute, which we add to our tags. Always to the start tag, which this link one is. So if we go to between the K and the closing tag, and we add a space, we are going to type REL. This is the relationship, I believe, technically, attribute, which means that we can tell browsers like what content we're actually adding in here as the link. So now when we press enter, VS Code will add these quotation marks around it. And this is how attributes work. You have your attribute name equals, and then some value in quotations. So for this icon that you see right here, pretty simple. The relationship is icon. You just got to add that. So now if you move your cursor one over to be between the last quotation mark and the closing caret, we'll add another space. And we are going to define which image we're going to use as our icon. And we use the href attribute. So this just links our content to another piece of content. So we'll click enter, and now we can put in that image. There's a couple ways you can do this, and we'll go a little bit more into URLs later, but you can do this nice thing in VS Code where if you press that slash, it'll open up like a file browser of that folder that you put this file in. You can also do period slash to get there. If you do 2 periods and a slash, it'll go back one in your file browser. Or if it's some image from the web that you want to grab real quick, like if you go to images.google.com and you like search for, you know, like browser tab icon, and you open image in a new tab, you could try to use this one. Usually it's like H stuff, like a URL that you could use. But I have one already, so I'm just going to do the slash. You don't have to type through all of these. You can start clicking, which is really nice. So I know I put it in my images folder. and I'm going to use this DL logo small, and that is how you add that browser tab icon. These values are going to be different for you depending on the name of your file, the name of your folders, stuff like that. We good on those? Yeah, so it'll be this, for this icon, it'll be the link relationship equals icon, href equals, and then in here, if it's an image in the folder that you're already in, you just press this /, and it gives you the browser of everything that's already in that folder. You can also do 2 periods and then a / to go like 1 folder back if you want to like access whatever is on your desktop or your downloads or something like that. And then you can just click through the file browser to find the one that you want to use. Cool. So now there's one more that I want to go through. We're going to go through 2 other ones next week when we start doing CSS. But this week we'll do the meta one. So opening caret, meta. And this is the tag to add metadata to our site. And this allows search engines like Google or Bing to better index our website in their search engine so that hopefully our website kind of shows up earlier in the search results for viewers when they're searching for things. And there'll always be 2 attributes you add to the meta tag. One will be name. So we'll do name equals, and then there'll be content equals. I'm just going to close it. Right now they're empty. I'm just going to highlight and then copy and paste so that we have 4 of them, because I'm going to go through 4 of these pairs. Okay, we all have 4 of these now. These empty ones, we can add the content soon. Cool. So the first name content pair that I want to show you is the author one. So name will be author. It sounds really funny when we're talking about the author's name, but you'll put the author's name in the content. So name is basically the name of the field. Content is what's in the field. So I'm putting author, and that's me. The next one we'll do name equals description. And this, depending on the browser, may show with the search results. So it might show like, Annenberg Digital Lounge, and then this text underneath it. So I'm just going to write learn HTML on it. You can write whatever you want. Our third pair, the name equals keywords. And then the content, you're going to add your SEO keywords. If you know search engine optimization stuff, you kind of have some keywords that when people are searching, you want to indicate what they are so that as people search those keywords, your content shows up a little bit higher because Google knows that it's related to that stuff. So I'm just going to add HTML meta tag because we're using it. And I guess I'll add CSS, even though we're not talking about CSS yet. And the last one is name equals viewport. Viewport is essentially the screen that someone is using when they're accessing your site. So it could be a phone, it could be a laptop, it could be a tablet, a bunch of different things. And we can configure how our site is going to be displayed by default across different screens here. So in content, we'll add width, width equals device hyphen width. No spaces there. So width equals device hyphen width. And this essentially makes sure that our content is displayed for the width of the device that someone's using, no matter what device they're using. Then we're going to add a comma and a space. And then the next part of this will do initial. So INITIAL hyphen scale equals 1.0. And this configures the default zoom view that people see when your content's loaded. Initial scale equals 1 just means that it's zoomed perfectly how you want it. It's not accidentally blown out or, compressed or something like that. Yeah.
Why would you ever want to see anything else other than the device scale?
So you don't. It would look weird. If you did this, it could someone could be on a desktop and it's way crunched in here on accident. So doing this makes sure that it's perfect. Because this should be the default, but depending on someone's browser or their settings or stuff like that, it could mess up how your website's displayed. So adding this is just like an insurance that it's going to show up how you want to do it.
All devices, if someone scale.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions about this head section before we move on to the body section? There might be. How we can do that, a resource that I really like is w3schools.com. And under tutorials reference, and I'll send out these link at the end of the series. Tutorials reference, it'll give you a list of all the HTML tags. And if I just search meta and I go through here, it'll say like what are some of the here, like name, application name, author, generator. There's some other options that you can do, and you can read more about those if you go into here. Yeah, this is a really great resource, by the way. Cool.
The meaning for that everyone can use for all websites.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the 4 basic ones. Cool. Now let's go into our body section. So I went in between where the bodies start and close ones are. And the first thing that we're going to do is actually something that is also not going to be displayed on our website, and that is comments. You can write comments in your code that will not be displayed by the browser. There is a way that you can access them, which I'll show you at the very end. So don't write anything crazy because people can still see it with like little loopholes. But these are really helpful for those scenarios where maybe you're handing off your code to someone else and you want to have something that's inline descriptions of what you're going to, what the code that follows is going to be doing. Or maybe it's one of those scenarios you code your portfolio website, you get that fancy new job, you're really excited, you work there for 2 years, and then you come back to your code to update it to find a new job, and you're like, what did I even do? So how you add the comments to your HTML is you do that opening caret again, you'll do an exclamation point, and then 2 hyphens. Now, because VS Code is really nice and dynamic, it already adds that end part to it. But if you didn't see, it added at the very end 2 hyphens and that closing caret. It's a little light with my theme. So now anything that you write in between these 2 things will be your comment. That is not displayed by default, but there is a way that you can access them again. So I'm going to just write one that says text-based elements because we're going to practice with learning some ways that you can add some text. You can go to the end and enter to have a new line. If you're curious why I'm adding so many different lines, you could write almost all your HTML code in one line if you want, but then going to try to go back and read through it would be pretty miserable. So this makes it a lot easier to read and scan through. So the first element that I want to show you about text is adding that body text. It's the opening caret and then P and then close it. And this one does need that closing tag, and VS Code knows that. So now anything you write in between here will be your paragraph text, your body text. Now, I don't know what I want to write, so I'm just going to look up random paragraph generator so that I can have some sample text. I'm just going to copy. You can put whatever you want, though, if you want. So I just searched up random paragraph generator was the first option. Just generated some random text and I threw it in there so that we can play around with it. Cool, but websites aren't just paragraph text after paragraph text after paragraph text. So we want to add some headings. And HTML allows you to add 6 different layers of headings. So I'm actually going to go before my paragraph text. I'm going to hit enter and go up to that line that I created. And I'm going to do opening caret H1 and then closing caret. So H1 is going to be the biggest heading. It is the most important heading on your page. You can only have 1 per page, so it should be your page title. So this, I'm going to say learning HTML, and that's just going to be my page title. Now, if I want to have something, this is like a story about headphones, I guess. It's my random text. So I can also, I'm going to enter down twice, opening caret H2. This is the next level of heading. You can have as many H2s as you want. This one I'm going to say story about headphones. And then you can have an H3, an H4, an H5, an H6. Most websites don't go all the way down to H6 because that's a lot of, breaking down of information, lots of subcategories. There's a lot of H2s normally. Cool. But let's say I'm anticipating that this body of text might be a little much for people to read at once. I can add a line break And this is one that can be input inline. Everything that we've done so far is like a new block, but this one we can put inline. So I'm going to just go in front of this sentence, randomly chosen, opening, BR, and then closing, and that'll insert one line break. You can insert as many as you would like. So I'm just going to insert 2 just so that it looks a little bit better. And you'll see what I mean when we go through the website that we create. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it might be under settings, I guess. Maybe I did change one setting. Let me try to find out real quick. Nice. There we go. Thanks for that. Cool. All good about these that we've learned so far? Nice. So now we can do some basic text formatting in HTML. And to showcase that, I'm going to add a new little section. Just so you know that these extra spaces I'm adding in between aren't going to be rendered by the browser. I'm just doing them so that we can see them a little bit better in the code. So I'm going to generate another random paragraph. We can grab, so that's actually not a great paragraph. So I'll grab this one. I'll add that as a paragraph under so we can play with it. And it's something about a coin spinning. Okay. You can also play around with this first paragraph if you'd like. I'm going to add another comment here to tell me that I am doing text formatting elements now. So there are 2 things that we're going to do. One is we can bold content, and another is that we can italicize them. And each of them actually has 2 separate elements that you can do to do this. I'm going to show you the more accessible way that'll port to more browsers easily. It does screen readers better. It like with the italicized one, it actually like the screen reader places like emphasis on the words, which is really cool for those people who have low or no vision. So the first one is the strong one, which this is where it'll render as bold normally. So maybe I want to bold spinning over and over again for me. So I'm just going to go right in my text, opening caret, strong. There's this closing one. I'm just going to copy paste it. You can also retype it if you want. It's another inline element that we're using, but this basically says, hey, yeah, render this as paragraph text, but bold it. So that's the strong element. Anything in between here will be bold. Now I want to italicize some stuff. Maybe it's this, the coin had already made up its mind. And to do that, we got to place emphasis on it. So it's caret EM. And anything put in between here will we have emphasis placed on it, which usually renders as italics. The other way to do these, if you really wanted to, if you want to bold it instead of doing strong, it would just be the letter B, but strong is more accessible and user-friendly. For italics, instead of EM, it would just be I. Cool. Any questions about those? Awesome. So I think everyone here is in Annenberg, and people are journalists. They're writing stuff online. You can communications, PR. You might be writing stuff that needs quotes. So let's learn some quotation elements. I'm going to add another comment just so I'm splitting this off. And I know that everything here is going to be quotation elements. I'm using these as headers basically that don't show. So I'm going to generate 2 paragraphs this time and copy that and place these in the paragraph text. It's a little funky, so I'm just going to clean it up a little bit and make them 2 separate paragraph blocks. There we go. I'm going to add another header just so we can see this. This is something, I don't know. I'm just going to say random story. Okay, so just have some text to play around with. So the first one we're going to learn is a block quote, which are those ones that if you've ever like read those like more informative books or like a newspaper or something where the quote is usually indented in both sides, that's the block quote. So I'm going to do that with this sentence right here. So I'm going to actually end my paragraph here, and I'm going to start a new one here. I'm just going to do some cleanup so it looks better. But now we have this text that we haven't put to anything, and we're just going to add the aptly named block quote tag. And I'm just going to make sure that the end tag goes after the text. So I have something like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's the block quote is a quote that is going to show like indented in. So if you ever see like
Oh,
the full like paragraph text, and then there's like this random like pull quote, basically. Now we're going to learn a new attribute for the block quote, and that is cite. So CITE equals, and this is where you can add your URL to where you pulled this quote from. So I'm just going to use this random word generator URL because I took it from that website. Now, if you want to add just quotation marks around certain text, that's really easy too. So if I'm wanting to do it like with this feel it in her bones, before that text, I can just do opening caret Q, closing caret, and then just take that end tag and put it at the end of my quote. And this puts quotation marks around that text if you're going to do like inline quotations. Okay. Now, as you're writing stuff and publishing it to the web, you might be using abbreviations at time for things. And so there's an easy way to do that as well. If I'm going to add something, I'm gonna, I guess, be funny, get rid of and say according to the DL, now I want a cookie, which is kind of funny. But the DL is the Digital Lounge, but it's an abbreviation and people might not know what that is. So before it, I'll put opening caret ABBR for abbreviation, close it, and then it adds that closing tag. So this will tell search engines this is an abbreviation. When people are searching up that company, this might show up, stuff like that. And a nice attribute to use with this is if I want to explain to people what DL stands for, I can add title equals and then spell it out. And this will show up as a tooltip. So when people hover over that abbreviation, a little pop-up will show up and put what you put in this value. So if I was like, I don't know what DL is, and I hovered over it, it would say Digital Lounge. And if you are making an inline bibliography, like in page, and you want to have some text that shows the work cited title, you know, when you italicize a book kind of thing, you can use the cite tag. And then I'm just going to put random paragraph generator because that's where I'm getting all my text. And this will show up as italics as well, but it's a little bit different from the emphasize one. This is specifically for works cited. Cool. We all good on quotation elements? Nice. So you're seeing I'm having a lot of code now. And as you build out your websites, it's going to balloon to so much code. But maybe I want to style this section, the spinning coin story that I have, or my text formatting elements differently from every other section. It's gonna be more for when we do CSS next week. We can use a div element, so div, to create this section. And it does need a closing one. So I'll just take that and put it at the very end of my section. I'm just gonna clean up some of the formatting here. This is mostly just for my visual pleasure. So what a div does is that it separates out your content so that you can target this later in CSS and style it differently. A screen reader, for those who are using those, will not recognize a div as separate content to the others. So if you want to separate something out that is important, it's a completely kind of like, I don't want to say off topic, but it's important to the story. It's its own section. We want to make sure that that is all covered. We would use, I'm going to do this with up here, section instead of div. Generic rule of thumb, when to use a div versus when to use a section. If it is important content to separate out, and it's not just separate for styling purposes, use a section. If all you want to do is group some content together so that you can customize how it appears on the screen and stuff like that, use a div. By default, these section and div elements will not change how your content is displayed until you apply CSS to them. We cool with section and div.
Section is, or what are the differences between section and div?
Yeah, they're pretty much the same. The main difference is that a screen reader, which is people who with low or no vision use so that it actually reads out the content of the website, that will not recognize a div as separate content. So if you wanted to specifically tell a screen reader, like this is a section, make sure you read this as it's kind of all grouped together, use a section tag. If you're just grouping your code together for like stylistic purposes, or if you're just putting it in your code so that you can see it a little bit better and it doesn't have that like accessibility need, use a div. Cool. All right. We got two more kind of mainly text-based elements before we start adding some images and videos where it gets really fun and we can actually see some fun stuff on our website. So I'm going to enter two more times, add another comment, and this is going to be my list elements. I'm going to show you how to create lists with HTML. And H2, I'm going to say HTML topics to learn, something random. Okay, so I'm going to enter to make a new line underneath that. And there's two types of lists that you can use. There's a ordered list and an unordered list. An ordered list will be numbered. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, mainly used for when there's steps that you have to follow in a sequence, like a recipe or navigation instructions. You have to make sure that they're all done sequentially. An unordered list will render as bullet points. And so this is, the order doesn't really matter. So HTML topics to learn, I'm going to do one that is unordered, so bullet points, just because they're topics that I think you should know. To create that unordered list, you would do opening caret, and then UL for unordered list, and then close it off, and it automatically adds that end tag. And then now we need to add the actual line items in our list. So if you press enter, and this is mainly just for code easily to be read, we'll do opening caret LI for list item. We also need that end tag, which VS Code is automatically adding for us. And then the content that we put in here will display as those bullets. So I think you should learn elements. I'll go to the end. I'll add another list element. And I think you should learn attributes. And I'll add one more. And we'll do links, which we'll learn next. So this is basically a 3-part bulleted list that'll say bullet, elements, bullet, attributes, bullet, links. Enter, and I'm going to do H2, and I'm going to say web coding journey. I'm going to enter, and this is going to be my ordered list. So numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, done sequentially. It's OL instead of UL. Just like the unordered list, we'll add list elements. So we are starting today with HTML, which I'll add as a list element. I'll add another one for CSS, which we're learning next week. And then intermediate CSS and web deployment is last. If you don't want to type all that out, you can just put whatever you want there. And that's how you make the lists. Yeah, that creates the ordered list, which is a numbered list. So in Word, when you're selecting like bullets or numbers, UL would be the bullets and OL will be the numbers.
Any other kinds of bullet points I would see?
You can change the like icons with CSS. We can remove the icons and we can make it into a navigation menu. I mean, that's kind of how you customize it. Cool. Any other questions about lists? All right, let's go to links. So I'm creating another section, link elements. I'm going to add another H2 so we have that header, and I'm going to just say contact the DL as an example, and enter. So a link, how you add that is the A element. So if I were to just do opening caret A, closing caret, it automatically adds that end tag, and anything I put between these two tags will be a link. We're going to do text here. You can also put these around an image if you want the image to be a link somewhere. You can put them around a div if you've grouped a div together and you want the whole thing to be a link. Right now, we're just going to be using text, and I'll scroll so it's a little bit higher up. So maybe I want to direct people to the Digital Lounge website. So I'm just going to type in what I want to show up on the screen. But now I need to add the actual link, which is using the same href attribute that we used before. So href equals, and then in this quotations, that's when you put your URL. So here I'm going to put HTTPS, and this is just the URL to the DL website. You can put whatever URL you want to do. You can copy paste it from Google, whatever you need. We went through these before a little bit, but this is what's called an absolute URL, which is the entire file location, the entire domain name. We can also do relative ones, which we did before with this images stuff, where if I wanted to find stuff in the same folder, I do that /. You can do the double periods and the slash to go back one folder. That's what's called a relative path, because you're not using the entire URL. It's just relative to where this file is saved. So just piece of advice as you start coding your own websites, try to organize all your stuff first so you know where it's going to live, because if you were to move locations of an image or something and you did that URL to where it was before, but you moved the image, it's going to break. And so when you view your website, that image is not going to load because it can't find it at that location. All right. There's also those links that you probably have clicked on online where it opens up your mail app on your computer, and then you can compose an email directly to someone. I'm going to show you how to do that one. So again, we're going to do our A tag. I'm just saying email the digital lounge. Some people just say email, stuff like that. We'll also put our href attribute in so that we actually tell this place what to do. And you'll type out mail to, MAILTO, put a colon, and then the email address that you want it to send to. So now when someone clicks on this link that says email the digital lounge, their mail app, which I don't have in my doc because I don't use it, will open up, and then the message will already be started to annenbergdl@usc.edu. Helpful for if you're going to create a portfolio website and you want to click the email and then the recruiter can automatically email you or something like that. Now, by default, a link will take you to that location in that same tab that you're in. So if I were to save this and view this website right now, and I clicked on Annenberg Digital Lounge website, it would take me away from this page and take me to the DL homepage. But maybe there's a situation where I don't want someone to leave my website quite yet. So that could be I'm writing this whole tutorial, and in the middle, I kind of briefly talk about something that is not super relevant, but I say, if you want to learn more, go to this website here. So I want them to open up in a new tab, but I don't want them to leave my site. So I'm going to do that with the DL website. And we use the target attribute equals, and then in the quotations, you'll do an underscore and then blank. And this will make sure it opens up in a new tab or window. And that same website I showed you before, w3schools.com, you can always search up these tags and these attributes to see all their different values and what they do, so that you can learn more about how you can fully customize whatever site you want to build. Cool. Questions about links? Nice. I'll take that as I'm explaining it pretty thoroughly. So now let's go into some media content. If you don't have any images or videos or audio files ready yet, that's fine. You can just watch along. I'm going to create my comment header. I'll also show you how you can embed a video directly from YouTube if you want. And I am going to do an H2 again. And I'm going to start off with images. So to add an image, you'll want to use the img tag. And this is one of those self-closing ones where you don't have to remember to add the end tag in case if your VS Code gets a little messed up and it's no longer adding the end one. I know that was happening to me last week and I couldn't figure out why. And then I updated the software because I was 4 versions behind and it magically fixed it though. So now there's a couple attributes that we want to add to here. The first one, and probably the most important, is the source src equals, and this is very similar to that href one. This is where we're putting that file for our image. So if I'm going to use a relative file path, so I'm going to put that /. I already have stuff in my same folder, my web coding series folder. I have an images folder, and then I'm going to do this Los Angeles horizontal one. You can pick whatever image you want to do. Remember, if you want to find something in that same folder, you do this /. If you want to go back one folder, do 2 periods right before it. So this is the most basic way that you can do the image. It'll load the image, but there's some stuff that we want to add to make it better. And the first one is the alt attribute. So ALT equals, and this is where we will put a description of that picture. This is helpful for 3 reasons. One, going back to the screen readers, for those who are using one, the screen reader will read out this alt text. So that makes sure that they are not missing out on the content if they're using a screen reader. Second, it helps search engines as well know how to categorize your site. It adds some additional stuff that might make your website rank up a little bit higher so that more people see your site. And then 3, in the untimely event that your image doesn't load for some reason, this description will be displayed instead. You want it to be pretty descriptive of your image, but you don't want to be super long. So this image is just like a sunset image and there's some palm trees. So I might just say like Los Angeles sunset with palm trees. If you're doing something like an infographic, you might want to explain like some key takeaways from it, something like that, just so that content isn't missed if the image doesn't load or someone's using a screen reader. And now we have 2 more attributes that are related that we want to add, and that is the height and the width. So height, HEIGHT equals, and this is where you can specify the height of your picture in pixels. If you want to be sure like what pixel value you want to show, I would just recommend opening up your picture in like Photoshop or Canva or something, and it'll tell you how tall it is. And I would just use that value if that's exactly how you want it. I'm just going to guess and do 600 px, which stands for pixels. There's a bunch of other units you can use as well, but we're just use pixels because it's the most easy. All right, we're going to add the width as well, width, and pick a value. You generally don't want to rely on these attributes to resize your image, just because depending on different screens, depending on the browser, it might look a little funky. If you ever have an image that you want to upscale, downscale, crop, please put it into a photo editor. Do that stuff first and then use it in here. But the height and the width are important attributes for the image and also for video, which we'll do next, as this tells the browser, hey, please reserve this space for an image that's going to load. When your browser is loading a web page, if it's taking a little bit long due to like file retrieval or internet connection, and it doesn't have height or width, it's going to load your page from top bottom. So it's going to see all this stuff and it's going to start loading that. And then there's an image, we got to add that, and your content's going to shift a little bit. So users are going to see like shifting formatting, which isn't the worst. It'll get to where you want it to be eventually, but it might look a little funny and people might be like, oh, it's broken, let me go away. So this just basically tells the browser, hey, reserve the space for an image. It's going to be there. Just wait for it to load. Cool. How are we feeling about images? Nice. So let's go and add a video. So the video has an even more clear tag than the image one, where image was IMG. Video is the word video spelled out. Pretty simple. This one is a little different. You do need a closing tag. And you'll notice that my cursor automatically goes in between them. You can write text in here, and this will show whenever your video does not display. Similar to the alt text, but this will just show in the video player. Most people do something that says like your browser doesn't support this video to kind of explain, hey, there is a video here. You're just not seeing it because of an issue, probably on your end. So now we got to add some attributes, and there's some more that we can use. But first of all, got to add that src, that source. And I'm going to use that same /, go to my videos. I taught a WordPress workshop probably a month-ish ago. And so I recorded that just like I'm recording this one. And I just took that video, and I'm going to use that one. So now your video will be there, but it's not going to be the most user friendly because we have to add the controls attribute. So controls. And this adds those playback controls that people are used to. So play, pause, forward, backward, changing the audio. So you always want to make sure you have controls added to your video. We also have our height and our width, which we just went through with images. I'm just going to use the same values and hope that it doesn't really mess up this video. So height and width, same reason to add. It tells the browser, hey, there's a video here. Please save space for it. A video will probably take longer to render in the browser than an image will. It's a bigger file size usually. And there's two more attributes that I want to talk to you about. These ones are a little bit more optional. The first one is autoplay. This will automatically play your video when it is loaded. It's usually kind of annoying when we go to websites and a video is autoplaying. So if you want to do it, you can, but most people get annoyed by it. One way to make it a little bit better, if you want it to autoplay, is the next attribute, which is muted, M-U-T. So this will automatically mute your video when it's rendered. So even though it's automatically playing, no sound is coming out, so we don't get that jump scare when the car commercial ad comes up. You can also just get rid of these attributes if you just want your video to be there, and then someone has to click play in order for it to go. Yeah, so controls adds the video playback controls. So clicking play, pause, forward, backward, audio levels. So make sure you add controls so that people can control how they view your video. Now I'm going to talk to you about audio, about another section called audio. This one, again, a very descript tag of audio. And again, we want the source SRC attribute. I'll go and find my audio. You'll notice I have two. So I'm going to show you a trick that we can use to make sure that something shows up across the browser. But I'm just going to click this MP3 for now. You do not need to add a height and width to this. A little less important. You can if you want. Please add controls. It adds the audio playback controls, the play, the pause, scrub. You can also autoplay this, and you can also mute it, just like the video. And then again, when you close it, you get that closing tag and that space in between. You can put that same thing. Your browser doesn't support this audio. You can play around with it too if you want something more fun and friendly. Yes, I will show you how to do that. So if you put a video in the audio one, no. So the video and audio, if I search video, I'll just, it does. Wow. It usually, where is it? It tells you which file things you should use, but maybe I'm missing it. But I guess it does. Maybe that's new.
That video audio, or will it just use the audio? Like if your video had audio itself, will that be shown with the video, or will that audio be included with the video, or are you laughing at the different audio thing?
So it depends on what file you're putting. So if you're putting like multiple files in here, which I think it would just break actually the player. So if you put, I'm assuming because I actually haven't done it, if you put the video file in audio, it's probably just going to take the audio from your video. Cool. So now there are cases where you want to upload different file types of the same file, just in case if a browser doesn't support a specific file type. Most modern browsers will support the basic ones, the MP4, the MP3 that you're normally using, the JPEGs, PNGs, all of that stuff. But if you want to just be extra sure, we can retailor this audio one I'll show you, where we are going to get rid of the source. I know it sounds scary. I'm going to bring this down so it's a little bit more easy to see. And then within the audio tag, in between the start and the close, you can add one called source. And this is where we can add src equals, and we can add multiple versions of the same clip. Why would this be helpful? If your browser that someone is using doesn't understand what WAV file, if it doesn't support it, it'll say, oh, I can't use this. It'll go to the next one and be like, MP3, cool, I can use that one. And so it'll only display one. It'll display whatever one they can do first. So if a browser can do WAV, then perfect, they'll load that one. But if they can't, they'll move to the next one. They'll see if they can do MP3. You'll want to make sure for these, and you do this with video too, you can do type equals, and then you would do like audio /WAV. You would do the same with video, put video instead of audio, and then MP3 is actually MPEG. And this just basically confirms to the browser, like, these are the different file types, you know, check to see if you can load this. Cool, you can, perfect. Now we're going to get to your question from before. Can you automatically embed something from somewhere else? And yes, you can. So the easiest way to do that is to go to that piece of content. So I'm just going to go to YouTube, and we upload our workshop recordings to the Digital Lounge YouTube. If you ever want to go back and see what we did in the past, I'm just going to go to the main page here, and then under share, you click share, there's this embed button. And when you click on that, you'll see the code that you can add to your site. So I'm going to add, just copy and paste this code right into this new section. And I'm just going to say embedded media from outside sources. I'm just going to paste it in there. So this is an iframe tag. And this is the one that you use to take content from other places on the web and embed it into your own. And you'll see when we go through actually viewing this, that it will have like the YouTube UI within it. It automatically has our width and our height that we know, our SRC, our source, that title, which is that kind of tooltip. Frame border is a new one for us. Frame border, when you do an iframe, it automatically adds like this kind of ugly gray border around it. If you want to get rid of it, just set frame border to 0. So this gets rid of that kind of ugly gray border around our embedded media. Allow, this just allows what you can do with the content. So this is, you can autoplay, you can share on the web, stuff like that. I would recommend kind of searching up all the different options because there's obviously a lot right here. And then this is allow full screen. This just basically allows someone to click on that expand video button that's in the bottom right of the YouTube videos and actually see the content full screen. And that's an iframe. You can also, I'm going to do one without changing that border so you can see what it is. But if I were to do the same exact values, you'll notice you don't have to put the PX for pixels because it is the default, but I just do it out of habit. I'm going to put the Digital Lounge website again so that you can see what a website looks like when it is in an iframe. Cool. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, no. So if you wanted to add the title above the video, you would add like a heading. The title would be like, if I think it's, we can see on the actual thing when we view this, I think it's one of those things that only shows up in like really small things if it doesn't load fully, kind of stuff like that. Cool. So before we go to actually viewing the site, and I'm going to show you how to do all of that fun stuff, I want to teach you 2 attributes that are going to be maybe slightly confusing today, but are going to make the CSS stuff next week super easy. So we can add attributes to different elements to better select them with CSS to style them. The first one is called ID, and basically you all have student ID numbers. They're unique to you. No one else on campus has them. They're identifiable to you. And so we can add an ID to an element so that when we're writing our CSS, we can target only that specific one. So maybe under my learning HTML, and I say at the Digital Lounge with paragraph text, I have a bunch of other paragraphs in here. And when we go through CSS, you can do a general selector that selects every paragraph element and applies the same styling to them all. But if I know that this is my subtitle, I want it to look different, I can add ID equals, and then I can put whatever I want here. So I'm going to put subtitle. Usually for your ID or the next one that we're going to do called class, use something that is kind of descriptive. and that you can remember, or you can look back and look. If you do something that's super complicated, you're going to have to retype it in CSS or copy paste to make sure it goes correct. You can only assign one element with this ID of subtitle. So I couldn't go down here and do ID equals subtitle. It wouldn't work. ID is only for one element. I can add a different ID, but I can't add the subtitle one. Cool. So maybe I want to also change my list items in my unordered list, but I don't want them to impact my list items in my ordered list. You can also do that. There's other ways you can do it in CSS that are a little bit more advanced, but the easiest way to do is add class equals, and then I'm going to say HTML-list. I'm just going to copy and paste this on each of these. So now when we learn CSS next week, we can target the class of HTML list and it'll apply whatever styling rules we add to every element that has this class assigned. Do those make sense in like a kind of high overview when we haven't actually seen them in action yet? Cool. So let's go ahead and do what we should have been doing all the time and just file save. You know, a keyboard shortcut, you can use it. It's the basic one. Command S or Control S. So now let's see how we can actually view what we've created to see how it functions. That live server extension is how we can view it automatically from VS Code. So there should be a button down here. I'm going to click to close it. That says Go Live. When you click that, it'll run the live server. You need to have that folder open, which is why I said, let's create a new folder, put our index.html in there, and it'll run everything in that folder. I don't know why these images aren't loading on the website, but this is all what we created. As you can see, we need CSS to style it to look a lot better than this. But we can see we have our H1 title, we have our paragraph text, we have our headings, our bold, our italics, we put our line breaks in, our block quotes here, we have our quote, we have our sites, our unordered list where it's bullets, our ordered list where it's numbers. We can click on a link. We did target equals underscore blank, which means it opened up in a new tab like it just did. I can click on this button where we said mail to and then put that email address and it opens up this. I haven't set up this mail app on this computer. We see our image. It loaded, so I don't see that alt text. Videos is on autoplay, but it's muted. But because I added controls, I can pause it, play it, do full screen, change the audio. This is what the default audio player looks like. You can click play. We embedded that YouTube video right here. You can do the same thing with SoundCloud too. You can put it in an iframe. And then for some reason, this one's not working. Cool. So that's one way that you can do this. If you didn't have the extension downloaded, there's also another way. If you navigate to your folder that has it, there's this index.html. Mine, you can see, has this Google Chrome icon. That's what it's default set up to open with. But if you right click or control click on Windows, open with, you can pick what to open it up with. And you can just open it up and it'll preview from there. And the last thing I want to show you is specific to Chrome. Firefox has like a similar capabilities. I think Microsoft Edge does too, but I haven't played around with them. But if you're using Chrome, you can right click or control click, and there should be this inspect button at the very bottom normally. When you click it, it opens up what's called Chrome DevTools on this right-hand side. And under the Elements tab, this is all of that HTML that we wrote. And you'll notice those comments show up. So it's not on by default if someone were to just view your site, but there is a way that they could see it. Under styles, you'll see this is where we'll do some CSS stuff. If you click on this button up here, you can hover over and it highlights the text so you can see the code. I find this really helpful if you see another website and you're like, I really like how they did that and their styling or like their content. You want to see that code, open it up in Chrome, inspect it, and then you can see the actual code that built that site. So as you're learning how to do new things and you're like, that's really cool, I want to replicate that, change it up to be my own thing, you can do this. Cool. That is all that I had planned. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Like a framework
Mm.
so we just build from scratch.
It depends. If you want to have like a project in your portfolio that says, hey, I built this portfolio with code, I would go the coding route. Or if you have like a very unique vision and you're like, this is how I want my portfolio website to look, I won't take anything else, coding is probably the only way to do it because it's fully custom. If you can code it, you can add it. A blogging platform like Wix or WordPress or Webflow or something will put its own limitations on what you can change styling wise. But if you wanted to get something up quick and you're just like, there's really, really great options for styling on those. And most of them you can also like add some custom code as well if you want, but they do have some limitations. So it's kind of the trade-off of like, do you want it to be easier where you don't have to code every little bit of thing, or do you want it to be fully customizable? You can do that with a lot of the time. You can do that as simple as like resizing too. There's other tools, like if you wanted to design it separately, if you want to use like Figma, for example, to design it before you like code it, you could do that as well. And then I think that there's some other like web tools that you can maybe upload your code to and then like probably see the different like screen sizes. Yeah, you would have to probably host it somewhere, and then I don't know a tool off the top of my head that would do it, but I'm sure there's one. There's hundreds of things out there.